All right. Dr. Ron Stotts.
Hey,
So thank you all so much for being here. This is the first of a four-part series, and we told you that you'll get to ask questions and talk to us and chat and that kind of stuff. And the way that works on YouTube Live is you obviously can't talk on YouTube, but you can write in the chat. And then when we finish with this first part, then I'll read those questions to Dr. Ron and hopefully get you some answers. So, Dr. Ron, thank you so much for being
oh,
here.
my pleasure. Thrilled to be here. It'd be great.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. What is one of your goals for what we're going to do for these folks, what they're going to walk away with?
I want them to feel confident that they really have access to everything they need so they can create that inspiring life that they truly want. So many of us, it feels like we're in a struggle or something's holding us back or something recurs in our life that kind of feels limiting. And yeah, we're going to show them how to move beyond all of that and really confidently move forward and create that life that they want.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. What is trauma?
Well, that's a big question. Yeah, certainly there's serious trauma that affects our childhood. Those could be physical, they could be emotional, they could be, a lot psychologically. They can come into us in very different ways, and they can certainly affect us for the rest of our life, emotionally and physiologically and psychologically affect us for the rest of our life, limiting us. Oftentimes we have there are buried thoughts that we're at the effect of, and we're not even sure what it is. And so, yeah, they're going to limit us. But for me, what I watch is most of our traumas are just experienced as normal. Most of us don't recognize that we've gone through any kind of trauma because that was the family we were raised in. It was normalized, if you will. And it's subtler and then people don't think about it as really serious trauma, but because it's overlooked, it can still shape our emotional and psychological development. Things like emotional neglect or invalidating a child's feelings. How many times has a parent said, "Oh, quit crying," or "Quit crying, or I'll give you something to cry about," or "Don't get angry." In other words, the child's feeling things and they're not allowed to express them. So, of course, they're taught to suppress those emotions, which has them really, that's what decreases their emotional intelligence as they move into adulthood. If you get parents dismissing those emotions, and there's just, perhaps there's a lack of affection or emotional support, and you can have really those can all have a significant impact. Perhaps the child feels unseen or unheard or even unimportant, and that I've seen other parents really doing their best, but it turns into excess criticism or comparison, overprotection, uncertainty, and those can leave scars. A question I would ask is, what does a child want more than anything else? And I've asked that question all over the world, and there's always a spontaneous love from the audience. And then I ask, well, what do they want, conditional love or unconditional love? Everybody knows unconditional love. So if you know that a child wants that unconditional love more than anything else, they intuitively know that the more love they have, the safer, the more apt they are to survive. What will they do to get it? And of course, the answer is whatever they need to. And a lot of times, what they need to do to get that love, to maximize that love within a family, is to go along with what is okay with the family, to stuff down emotions, and they really learn to, this is what I can feel, this is who I can be. I better hide these parts. I better, highlight these and suppress those other parts. And those are traumas. Those are traumas that keep most of us who felt like we had a normal childhood very limited. And we keep running into those limitations and never quite sure what's going on. Yeah. So,
Okay, so everyone has the trauma. Is it still in their bodies? And how does it affect them physically? How does it affect them mentally?
well, I think these singular events or ongoing events, they think in terms of a child when they don't know how to process something emotionally. They don't know what to do with the energy or the circumstances. They tuck it down deep into their gut. They bury it in their gut. And so, then they move on in their life. And so that's really, can result in a person later having difficulty acknowledging or even expressing emotions. They can end up with a sense of low self-esteem, feeling unworthy of love or attention. That sense of I'm not enough comes from those buried emotions that we had as a child. That leads to feeling disconnected, from the self and others, and struggling with, regulating their emotions. And the problem is that those things are normalized, as we talked about. And so you go ahead and we have to acknowledge those things.
Oh, okay.
Disrupted.
Okay. So someone's going through all this trauma and it's affecting them physically, it's affecting them mentally. How how is it affecting their relationships?
Well, your relationship with yourself is mirrored in your relationship with others. So the level of disconnection that you have within yourself is going to be mirrored in that relationship with others. You're going to protect your heart, and reasonably so as a child. You have to protect yourself. You figure out how to do that, but until you heal there's that distance that you create in your relationships. And so people, they want to get closer. They love you and want to be nearer, but you just kind of keep them at that distance because that's what you need to do to feel safe and take care of yourself. So it's not until you heal those past traumas and really take that armor, excuse me, off of your heart, that you can open up your heart, which of course allows you to open up your mind and really live the full, amazing life that you want.
It's absolutely amazing is the word that I believe you used, and it is really true. So the nervous system, the brain, how do they react to trauma?
Well, the nervous system basically, I've got a couple notes here. Yeah. So trauma, whether it's due to abuse or accidents or violence or just those subtle traumas that we're talking about, they do profoundly affect the nervous system and the brain. And it leads to the changes in perception, emotional regulation, and behavior. And, trauma, so it literally rewrites and limits the brain, affecting key areas involved in stress, emotion, and memory. So I'm going to go through some of those areas of the brain just so that we really understand. The amygdala, really, it's the alarm system and that regulates the emotions and fear and threat detection. So rather than, helping and resettling the brain as it should be doing, it becomes hyperactive, leading to chronic fear, hypervigilance, and exaggerated responses. And the hippocampus is kind of the storyteller that regulates memory and keeps things in context. So, it's meant to distinguish between the past and the present so that we know when something's going on. Oh, that was in the past. This is in the, current moment. And process memories. But with trauma, it literally physically shrinks and it's harder to differentiate the real and the perceived dangers. So people are overreacting and reacting to everything coming in their life. And the prefrontal cortex, that's where decision making, that's where higher level thinking comes in, logic and higher level thoughts are regulated there. And with that trauma, it's meant to control impulses and formulate rational thinking. And of course, emotional regulation too. But with that trauma, it leads to poor impulse control, difficulty managing your emotions, diminished ability for higher level thinking. That's a big part of what the work is neurologically rewiring so that you can access those levels of thinking again. And think in terms of the brainstem. You've got the spine coming up, and at the top of that spine is the initial brain, the reptilian brain, think of it as. And it's really focused on survival instincts and emergency, handling things in an emergency, meant to govern really survival functions, heart rate, breathing, that type of thing. But through those subtle or more significant traumas, it gets stuck in survival mode. And, it makes it hard to relax. You end up with rapid heart breathing or heartbeats and nervousness. And oftentimes people have digestive issues. So understand that that nervous system response, of fight, flight, freeze, fawn meaning where you close down and hide, that sympathetic nervous system, prepares the body for action. But with that, it goes into hyper arousal, overreacting to real or perceived thoughts due to those traumas. People are just not able to manage themselves. And so, the parasympathetic system is really supposed to return the body to a state of rest, but it just literally shuts down and disassociates, leaving us feeling numb and detached and disconnected. So, these are significant, responses that we all have to some degree, and we might not recognize them in other normal situations, but as certain incidences come into our life, all of a sudden, oh, yeah, I am overreacting. I am, not handling this situation well, this person well, so, it results in people prioritizing others' needs over their own. They have a fear of conflict. They don't want to upset others. They end up people pleasing, for example. And all of those things really don't allow us to discover and be who we are. So, yeah, even subtle trauma, it just isn't just in the mind. It rewires the brain and the entire nervous system. The good news is that neuroplasticity allows healing through intentional regulation and safe connections. And so, yeah, it's a process to recover from this is to safely and supportively explore the past and heal those ignored or abandoned aspects of your life so that you can rediscover and accept all of who you are.
Yes, 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 yes. So people who, much like I was when we first started working together, people like myself who think, mm-mm, mm-mm, nope, I am not doing it. You can't make me. I'm not going to go back. I had to live through it. I'm not going to go back and look at it again. Why should I do that?
Yeah.
All those objections. Uh, how can you speak to someone to help them really understand that you are going back, whether you think you are or not?
I think if anybody's honest about it and they look at their life, they are at the effect of the past. The past is the past and you should leave it there. That sort of philosophy, it just doesn't make sense because we all have, we're creating our life and we're, have our dreams and images of who we are, what we want to do with our life. And all of a sudden there's subtle limitations that come up, little sabotaging that takes place. And those are all things from our past that trigger those. You might be in a relationship and somebody says something to you and triggers you. Well, that's your past coming up. Your inability to be compassionate or empathetic with others at work. You're being triggered by different people's ways of being and how they do or don't do what you want them to be. That is really all of your past coming up and running your life. What I watch is people are driving down the freeway of life and they've got their foot on the gas pedal, but they don't recognize that they've got their foot on the brake also. And the level of energy and yeah, their personal power that they are using to hold that brake down, to be cautious and feel safe and to control their emotional backlog and everything is significant. I mean, people often recognize that about 45% of my energy or 80% of my energy is going towards dealing with that emotional backlog. So imagine if you heal that and all of a sudden you have access to all that power to move forward in your life. You don't necessarily have to press harder on the gas pedal, just release the brake and enjoy your life, you know?
It is very real, guys. I know anything that sounds too good to be true usually is. And guys, this is not 29.95, and next week you're going to be at a higher level of consciousness and life is going to be great. It's a lot of work. Do you do the work for your clients?
You know, you can lead a horse to water. I'm really nothing but a guide, and I guide people on a journey that I'm quite familiar with because I had to kind of slash my way through the jungle to find my way and my own healing and my own growth and development many, many years ago. And I've had the tremendous opportunity to guide others along that path and really guide them into greater self-awareness, to guide them into healing their emotional backlog, reconnecting with themselves, and really discovering who and what they truly are. You know, that the irony is that unconditional love that we wanted more than anything else as a child can only be found within ourselves. And it's found by going back in and reconnecting and becoming whole and healing all those aspects so that we become whole, we become authentic, we become the person that we're meant to be, and not at the effect of that lingering past, that trauma, that emotion that isn't supporting us in fully being the authentic person that we want to, that we're capable and want to be.
So why do triggers trigger so severely?
Well, it's like pushing on that nerve. It really reactivates the trauma of that pathway in the brain. And that's another good example. The past is the past. Well, no, it's still there. And somebody says something or does something, it triggers that old neurological pattern. And, the amygdala fear center overfires, the prefrontal cortex and logical and relational aspect of it shuts down, and the nervous system shifts into survival mode, and we go into fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn. And this automatic response just bypasses rational thinking, leading to, really intense emotion, physical reaction, impulsiveness, unsupported behaviors. And that's why, it's one thing to understand emotional intelligence and to try and be compassionate, try and be empathetic and all those things so that you get along with others more fully. But the truth is, you really have to go in and heal those aspects of yourself so that you're not just intellectually trying to be that way, that you truly, that's where you're coming from because you've healed, you are whole, you are confident, and you're capable of creating a safe, supportive space for others. So yeah, I mean, and for me, working with high level leaders, it's like it frees them up and gives them access to levels of thinking and mental agility that they just didn't have before. And that allows them to be able to handle the rapid change and increase complexity in today's business world and, of course, in life in general.
The world is changing so rapidly,
Indeed.
and I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but people seem to have a little bit of a shorter temper now,
Yeah.
on the roads, in the stores, all over. What do
Right.
you think is causing it? Is it a rise, or is it just that I'm more aware of it?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, the population, when I look at how the world has changed in my lifetime, it's just incredible. I saw a picture of Seattle where I grew up as a child, and it was startlingly, it looked like one of those old pictures, but I realized, oh, I was alive back then. I mean, it is all changing so quickly, so rapidly. My grandkids, are doing things that I wouldn't have ever thought about doing and having abilities that I wouldn't have even thought of. And so, here we are trying to keep up with this. Now we're introducing AI and going, okay, well, this will help you do it faster, and I think everybody kind of understands that all these tools that have been designed to make our life easier don't seem to really accomplish that. They make it more and more difficult, Nothing like running into a tech problem and challenge during your workday that you have to spend 2 hours to work out, So it's a new world, and Yeah, everybody has to shift and grow into it.
Absolutely. And you said you have to go in and fix it. Just an
Well,
overview. I know you can't in 10 minutes tell how it all works, but just an
yeah, I
overview.
mean, what do people do if something happens emotionally in your life and it's not safe to process it? You don't know how to process it. Like say you're a child and there's nobody there to help you and you don't understand where do we put that emotion? Say we're feeling angry, say we're feeling hurt or ashamed or whatever it might be. Where do we shove that emotion? And a lot of times people go, oh, well, we hide it in our brain. It's like, no, our brain regulates it, but that's not where we put it. We put it into our gut. My mentor, Joseph Campbell, his famous quote is, you've got to go into that cave within to access the treasure that you seek. And that treasure that you seek, of course, is yourself. That treasure you seek is that unconditional love that you've always wanted. And even on a bigger level, that treasure that you seek is an experience of what you're really capable of, gaining full access to your intellectual abilities, opening up your heart, opening up your mind, and in experiencing and creating the life that you truly want and certainly are worthy of.
Certainly are. You're here, you're unique, and you're here for a purpose. And it's
Absolutely.
really
And,
wonderful to
and
figure
knowing,
some of
you
that
know,
stuff out.
it's funny because it's not until people heal that emotional backlog that they truly begin to recognize what their highest intention truly is. It's like, oh, I know what I want to be doing. I know who I am and what I want to accomplish in my life. And that focus, that compass heading, if you will, makes all the difference in their life. Not only they access their capabilities, a higher level thinking and more creativity and all of that, but intuition, but they know where they're going and they're able to use these new abilities, tools to move themselves into that direction and create that life that they truly are, you know, inspired by.
It's beautiful. So for people that are listening to us right now,
Yep.
what are some practical steps that they can take to identify the patterns that are holding them back?
It's like any habit. When I was a kid in grade school, I used to chew on my fingernails. And to be honest with you, I didn't think anything of it. Till I was sitting at the desk one day and this pretty little girl next to me looked down at my fingernails. And I went, oops. And I realized, oh, that's not a socially acceptable thing to be gnawing on your nails and having them all raggedy. And so, I had to go through that process of paying attention when I went to bite my nails or, starting to clip them rather than chew on them. And, sorry about the grossness of all this, but, it was just, there was this transformation. I had to pay attention. And that's with any habit. You have to start paying attention. You have to become more aware of the subtle cues that, oh, I'm feeling nervous, or I might move into that habit here and now. And so it's that intention to change that makes the initial difference, I think. And that allows you then to go, okay, do I need help? With not chewing my fingernails, it was more, okay, I learned to manicure my nails. But for the deeper issues, then we find somebody who can help us. You get somebody who can do transformational therapy and guide you on that inner journey and where you can become more self-aware and able to handle and acknowledge, heal all those aspects that we've talked about. If you can, when people call, and we're just discussing what they're interested in, where their challenges are and what they truly want in their life, they're always, I'll say something about you're not breathing. And they go, well, how do you know I'm not breathing? Or how do you know I'm up in my head? And it's like they don't even recognize that they're not breathing. They don't realize that they're looking for emotional answers clear up in the head where they'll never find them. So you have to learn to breathe. You have to learn to breathe into and through and access those parts of yourself that you've hidden away. And, just kind of referring back to what I was saying, you have to retrain that nervous system, literally neurologically rewiring your brain and developing an entirely new mindset and abilities to access higher levels of thinking. You know, it's in truth, it's a combination of all of this. But yeah, I mean, with my clients, it's like if I can, the initial work is about quieting the mind. Then we start, you know, the forebrain, we quiet the mind, and that forebrain develops and blossoms in that quieter mind, you know, arena. And that gives them much greater access to higher level thinking, but also to their imagination, creativity, and intuition. And that alone changes their leadership ability. That alone changes their life. But then they also learn to, oh, I have a need a solution. I need a design. I need an image, whatever it might be that they're seeking, whether it's in work or in home. And they learn then to breathe and quiet their mind so that they can access even higher levels of thinking. I call that big mind. And that allows people to, rather than running down all sorts of dead ends, they just learn to quiet their mind and access the best of who and what they are. And it's always, you know, incredibly insightful answers that come.
It is, and it is shocking as it starts to happen. And you have made it very clear that it takes about a year to fully rewire your brain
That's
neurologically.
yeah, and that's just physiological reality. You know, it
Right.
starts right away. It really does. But and it gets better and better and better. But I watch people, they'll come and they say they're a CFO and they want to be a CEO. Well, yeah, okay. So you can learn all the stuff, you can heal, but it takes that time, you know, to really neurologically rewire so that you've got it all handled. And then they do. I would say almost every time they move into those higher levels of position. Not because they were around longer, but they became the CEO that they were capable of and needed to be to get that job, that position.
And it's such a huge position. It is when you think about a company that has, say, even a small-ish larger company that has, say, 500 employees,
Right.
all 500 of those people know who that CEO is.
Sure.
All 500 of them want that CEO's attention. They want the ear. They want, and it's, how can one person do all that? How can one person do all that and more?
Well, I think even the way that's worded is telling because they don't have to do it. They have to just support others. They have to bring out the best in others. They have to really have leadership training as a core part of everyday work environment. And as they create a safe, supportive work environment and they're bringing out the best in others, those people really want to give their all. And what happens is you start getting a more collaborative, cooperative organization that's more productive and profitable. And I mean, all the research shows that you're going to increase your productivity at least 40%. To be honest with you, many of my clients kind of scoff at that because they do much, much better than that. But it's a matter of, I used to row, and it's like, there was 8 guys and the coxswain in the back. And boy, if we weren't all in alignment and rowing in the same direction and the same timing and everything, we wouldn't have, we were national champions and we wouldn't have had a chance of that otherwise. I was walking with my wife the other day and there was Canadian geese flying over in that big V, and she was sharing how it research she was looking at shows that a Canadian goose can go 70% further when they're in that V than they can on their own. And that's true with an organization. That's true with a family. If everybody's in alignment and working together and supporting each other, you're going to accomplish a great deal more. You're going to be much more successful, have a bigger impact in the world, and you can enjoy life a lot more too.
Absolutely. So you said a lot of this has to do with finding that love that unconditional love that you've been looking for, finding it inside of you.
Yeah, that's the only
And
place you're
I
going to
think
find
that
it.
might be foreign to a lot of people, or they may be afraid that they would become a narcissist
Narcissism is fear, not love. Narcissism comes from fear of not being enough, fear of not being lovable. And so if you love yourself, if you truly, I remember this fellow, he's just a bear of a guy. He's got literally five nine-figure businesses, and he came in, and he only came in because he was scared, and the love of his life was leaving. His two adult sons were disconnecting from him. He was losing key players in his businesses. It was just COVID was getting underway, and his first comment to me was, well, I don't love myself and I'm doing fine. I'm kind of like, oh my God, here we go. Within a month, just because he had wandered on that path and gone inside and really understood where he was coming from, began to understand his gruffness really came from a way of protecting himself from his dad, understanding that he was really had some control issues that came out of fear and not really, from an empowering place within himself and for others. And so it was so fun to watch him because within a month, he had literally fallen in love with himself. And he just was feeling so good about it and began to, all began to really restructure his organizations. He sent me some of his C-suites and they became the CEOs of the different organizations. And he, started focusing on what he really wanted to be doing and started enjoying his life and much, much more. And the love of his life who had left him, and I think that was the main reason he came because I had worked with her a couple of years before. She came back. They got married, and they're an incredible couple because they're really about opening up their hearts and supporting each other on their journey, rather than him trying to control and manipulate because of his, sense of inadequacy or something. And so, the two sons started reconnecting with him, and his businesses, like I say, just took off. And so that's the difference you can expect. That's the difference everybody sees, not only in their work, but in their life, their health, their perspective in the world of themselves and of others.
Well, one of the things that you very kindly warned me about before I started this was you said all of your relationships will change. Well, that's so very true. And the one that's changed the most by far is my relationship with myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you need to be prepared for your relationships to change if you change. People, it will take them a little while to get used to. I'm just telling you, it will take them a little bit to get used to the fact that you're not the same person that you were. And that's okay. That causes them to grow as well. And so it all works out really well. So
Yeah.
can you share an example? You don't have to give a name. And I know you just told us one story, and that was a great story. Five nine-figure businesses that this man is running, and it took his wife saying, "I'm done," for him to go, "Wait a minute, I'm really not okay."
Yeah.
And everybody else in the world's looking at him thinking he's got it all together. And I
Right.
think that's probably more common than not, that you
Oh,
see someone and it looks like they have it all together, but inside they really don't.
I see it all the time. I can guarantee it.
I guarantee it. Okay. So if somebody, oh, I'm sorry. The question that I was asking you is someone who had a trauma that they were unaware of and helped discovered it, and now their life is completely different. Do you have any stories like that?
Oh, I've got hundreds of them. Let's see which one comes up. Yeah, I'm thinking it was this back a ways. A woman came to me, very sharp, really capable. She was actually running her own corporation, and yeah, just very impressive. She was just in her early 40s, and but she was recognizing something was holding her back. She was having trouble in a relationship with her husband, who was a great guy. So it wasn't like there was some significant thing. There was just a withhold that they were experiencing. And we started exploring her past. We started just going, hey, let's go down this path and see what we ran into. And what we ran into is that when she was 4 years old, her dad had died. And as she started remembering that whole experience, it's like everybody sort of set her aside. Nobody talked to her about what was going on. Nobody helped her with her feelings. Everybody sort of, go in the other room, go here. They just kind of ignored her, but kept her out of the whole experience. And so here she was, 40 years later, still dealing with that incompleteness, that lack of having healed that experience. And so, as we ventured into that, as she sort of breathed and reconnected to that little 4-year-old girl that she was, as she helped that little girl, reparenting her and helping her to acknowledge and express and release those emotions around that little girl became clearer. And all of a sudden, she wasn't the effect of that incident any longer. She felt more connected and, to the adult self. And so the adult self starts, that's where that integration comes place, where you start reconnecting with yourself, accepting and integrating all aspects of yourself back in. And that's where you become whole. That's how you become authentic. That's, as you learn to love that part and other parts, that's how you find that unconditional love that you've always wanted. And, you become a better person. You're enjoying life more. You're more capable of doing whatever it is you want to do. And yeah, it's the most worthwhile, transformative journey you could ever possibly take.
It truly is, and that's why I really wanted to do this series and get completely out of my comfort zone and do it live. As you guys already saw, we had a snafu with that. But that's just part of it. You have to be willing to crawl before you can walk, and walk before you can run. And doing this is the biggest gift to yourself that you can imagine. And guys, I know that it's a scary thing, and most people, including myself, wait until they absolutely have to. What a waste of time. I mean, I wish I had met you 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So you were doing this 30 years ago, weren't you, or something
Oh
similar?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the people that you helped 30 years ago, I can't even imagine how much better their entire experience of life is. In other words, guys, don't wait. Don't wait. If you're curious about this, stick your toe in the water and just see. I can attest that it's the best thing I have ever done for me. And I've
Yeah.
never really understood that you're supposed to do things for you. Guys, there is no one out there who cares more about your body. There's no one who cares more about your finances or anything than you do. So you need to take responsibility for it and get rid of that extra baggage of all that stuff that has been holding you back and you didn't even know it. And it's not as bad as it seems. It's
Well, and the better you take care of yourself, the more you can support others. That's just the truth of it. You're not rescuing them, you're actually supporting them and helping them become empowered beings themselves. So, yeah.
So can you go through your rescuer, victim, persecutor game?
Sure, you want me to share what that's about, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. There's, I call it the big game because almost everybody's playing it, and I certainly was fully engaged in the game as I was coming up. And I found myself there's a rescuer, the persecutor, and the victim in the sort of triangular game. And I was a really good rescuer. So, of course, a rescuer needs a victim. So I would find women who were disempowered and didn't feel good about themselves. And the problem with I had is that I could actually rescue them. So within a year or two, they'd go, thanks, and dissolve the relationship. And I was going, well, wait a minute, we were just getting going here, and so, but in those relationships, and one person can play by themselves, but it's usually at least a couple where, the victim, say, gets angry at the rescuer, so she becomes the persecutor and the rescuer becomes the victim. And, so they can trade places like that. Maybe one person's a victim and the other's a rescuer, and there's an outside persecutor, a society or a situation or whatever. So our lives are not, we're not meant to rescue others. We can support them, we can give them guidance and a hand. But if we're rescuing them and we're coming from that rescue place, that's just a way of playing limited. I'll get, if I, if I rescue you and you play the victim role, then that's a way of conditionally loving each other, conditionally setting up a relationship to be together. And that works. A lot of people have conditional loving relationships where that victim persecutor rescue game gets played out. But what a difference when you learn to love and accept yourself and you can step outside of that game where you're really loving, yourself unconditionally. You're not looking, you don't do things, you're not trying to be things, you're not looking outside of yourself for love and acceptance. You're not really giving everybody else power over you because you're trying to get love and acceptance from them. And it really is a whole different life. It's a little scary for me. It was like, I was in a really good relationship, but I recognized I was doing my rescuer and she victim, and I let her understand that I really want to step out of that. And she didn't want to. She just said, "No, I like this." So it did cost me that relationship. It was very consciously going in two different directions, but the next relationship I got into, and we've been together 35 years now, married and whatnot, and it's a relationship about supporting each other, opening up our hearts, sort of supporting ourselves on our journeys, and really bringing out the best in each other. It's not about rescuing and victiming and trying to get conditional love from each other. It's about really discovering what our love is capable of and who we are within that story, that journey of love.
That is beautiful. It is so beautiful. And that does bring up a question that if someone is more conscious and they are in a marriage or a relationship with someone who is not and has no desire to be, much like the lady that, how does the more conscious person deal with that gently?
Well, first of all, if do you need them to change? Perhaps, I mean, let go of your image and expectation of them being different. That would be the first thing. When you're in a relationship and the person feels like you want them to change, then they feel like they're not good enough. And of course, that just shuts them down. What I find is if you just focus on really healing and loving and taking care of yourself, that you're on this journey and you're opening doors for others to go through, if they want to. If they don't, well, then you move on. You can't do anything about it. Otherwise you'd be rescuing them or persecuting them or, one or the other. You'd be playing that game. You have to have the confidence to be able to live a life in which you're evolving and growing and discovering who you are and what you're really capable of. And that sometimes, does mean letting go of relationships, friendships. But it also means that you're going to run into and be in alignment with people who are playing on that same level. And those people are not trying to rescue you. They're not trying to give up their power to you or have some sort of negotiation in the relationship. They're partners on this journey of really becoming all that you're capable of being. And that's what they support in you. That's what they celebrate in you. And all of a sudden, those friends are the ones that you find are the most valuable. My friends, my early friends in life, I would have kept in my gut, I would have kept my cave doors shut and tried to act a certain way to be accepted. Well, my friends now, my cave doors are wide open. I have party lights and music going, and they're welcome to go in there and see what's in there and at any time. In fact, I welcome them, saying, "Hey, there's a little cleanup in aisle 5 over there. You might take a look at." You know, we're we're able to be vulnerable. We're able to be emotionally honest. We're able to support each other. because we know and trust that we're on this journey of evolving into higher and conscious levels of, life and leadership.
And we are all so much smarter together than we are on our own. People can see
Truly.
things that we can't see that are
Yeah.
just glaring, and some people have some really good tact about the way they tell you that. So if someone gets triggered, what tips can you give them to help them calm down in the moment?
Well, it's really a matter of, if you're triggered, think in terms of that nervous system is just a little haywire. It's not as subtle. It's not taking you to where you want to go to. So you have to intentionally bring yourself back into a balanced place. And the best way to do that, and it's a tool that I developed many years ago, let's just say, and it's worked for me, and it's still a tool that I use today. And I call it the stop process. And the S stands for stop for a moment. The T stands for take several gentle deep breaths. The O is as you're breathing, observe what's going on. What are you feeling? What's going on in the situation? How are others dealing with what's going on, whatever the circumstances might be. And as you're observing that situation that you're in, recognize what your best next step is, and then proceed on that best next step. Now, I'm not saying you do that and everything's better, but I'm saying if you take a breath and you observe and you proceed, you become more present, more curious. And that allows you to really see challenges as opportunities. And if you keep doing that, in your next breath you breathe and observe, your next breath you breathe and observe and proceed and continue that, that's called a mindful life. That is how you develop a mindful life, is by really breaking it down into those steps where, whether you're playing golf, you're in relationship, you're in communication, you're in business, you're in whatever you're in, that mindfulness allows you to always be present, always curious, always conscious enough to see the opportunity in any situation in your life. So all of a sudden life becomes easier, better, more supportive for
It
yourself and others.
it is everything he's saying and more. I cannot tell you how much the breathing has helped in moments where I would say I had been triggered or something happened that was, and just breathing. You taught me that when you're upset or scared or fearful, you hold your breath.
Yeah.
And when you hold your breath, what happens?
Well, you hold your breath, and that's your way of packaging that emotion that you're not able or comfortable or supported in acknowledging and expressing. So you stick it into that cave, that backlog of emotions. And the problem is you get a pretty large amount of emotional backlog in that cave, and that takes a lot of energy to conceal and hold those cave doors shut. And that energy, rather than moving forward in life, is what holds you back because you're not acknowledging what's triggering you in your life, what you're afraid of, what you're being held back by. You're not accessing the best of who and what you are because it's all stuffed away in that deep, dark cave that you're afraid to look into. I remember I used to meditate quite a bit, about 30,000 hours probably by the time I was 40 or so. But I remember during a meditation once, I had this vision of a cave, and I went with it, and I just stayed breathing and stayed quiet. And as I was looking at this cave, I saw all these amazing large masks, very scary masks, kind of tribal masks from, island society of way back when. And I was like, wow, these are amazing. And I realized, oh, this is my inner cave that I'm looking at. And that allowed me to go, oh, my little boy is in this cave hiding. So I called in and I said, great job. And I started complimenting him on these amazing masks that he had made, even though he had made them to scare people and keep them out of my heart. I was like kind of going, hey, yeah, nice, celebrating his abilities. And he kind of snuck out and came into relationship. And that was our first introduction to and connection with each other on that level. And because he was being accepted and loved, because I was celebrating his ability, he trusted me. He felt safe. And in that safety, we were able to connect. I was able to help him heal. We were able to become whole. We were able to enjoy life. And my wife would let you know that I let him out pretty regularly.
Peter Pan himself, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen.
yeah.
And it is something that I can't hardly believe I'm about to say this on YouTube Live. However, I will tell you, after my 2 days with Dr. Ron during the 8-week program, there's twice that you're in person for 2 days. After 2 days with Dr. Ron, the next morning I had to get up at 3:30 in the morning to catch my plane to get back home. And I got up. I know he's laughing because he knows this story, and it's just hilarious to me. And I got up and I was so happy. I honestly, truly don't ever remember being that happy
Yeah.
ever. I was just so happy. And it's 3:30 in the morning. And I looked at the bed, and this little girl that was in me that had been shut down for so long jumped on the bed 3:30 in the morning, jumping on the bed. And then I realized it's 3:30 in the morning and you're on the third floor. You probably should not do this. And then at the airport, there
The
were
inner
these
child
little,
of the person below you was probably going, wait a minute.
hey, yeah, raw. So what he's telling you, it it does sound out of this world if you haven't explored it. It doesn't seem like you should be able to heal someone from 1970 or whatever, whenever. It doesn't. I mean, it's not logical. And that's one of the things that I think drove you the craziest about me, is because I'm just such a logical mind. And it's like, but when you let go and you just give this a try, it is amazing the parts of you that come back that you have forgotten, that you didn't even know were there.
Well, and when I hear time and time again, people certainly in their 40s, but also in their 50s, 60s, and even in their 70s, going through the work, one of the things that I find them saying is, why did I have to wait so long to discover who I was? Why did I have to wait so long to really feel this way about myself and to be able to create this life that I'm creating? And it's like, it's never too late. But I'll tell you, the sooner you can do it, the better. My gift in life was that, going through the Marine Corps in Vietnam in 1967, I came out of that really a mess. And I was such a suicidal mess that I really had to find my way out. And it was, it's like that was the worst time of my life, but it was also the best time because it forced me and then to go on that inner journey. It forced me to learn to breathe and to quiet my mind and look deeply within and to heal those things that were so scary to me. And yet that was the journey that allowed me to access all that I'm capable of. That's the journey that allowed me to be able to serve and support others on their journey and allow them to really create and manifest the life that they're worthy of. So yeah, so it's worth it. It really is whenever you do it.
Yeah, no doubt. What about journaling? How important is that?
Well, I think it's a good tool. I really do. It's certainly a good tool during the healing process, but it's also a good tool to kind of help in the maintenance of it. But I also find it's helpful to really look back at your journals. I mean, I remember I just was my wife and I were moving into this a new house for us, and we kind of wanted to have this kind of gathering before we brought all the furniture in. It was a fairly small house, so but I'd put my books on the shelf and done some things, and everybody was gathering around having a good time, and somebody pulled out this little notebook, and it was one of my journals from way back, and it was talking about all of my spiritual experiences out in the desert with one of my teachers, and really going into all these extraordinary opportunities that I had and experiences that I had, and so it's really it woke me up. It's like, oh, right. Yeah, that's part of who I am. And, I had just gone through chiropractic school and, and had been in this sort of intellectual mode for 3 or 4 years. And so all of a sudden, it brought me back to that spiritual aspect of myself. And it really opened up, that integration of that. So, do your journaling, but also, take a look back, and yeah, I've got a book called The Ins and Outs of Mindfulness that I wrote and have out there on Amazon, but it's also got a journaling aspect. And so you can, you know, have that year of transformation and also look back at the different changes that you went through. And that kind of thing is what you want to do.
Okay, very good. So, what are some misconceptions that people might have about healing trauma that's holding them back?
Well, certainly things like time heals almost, time alone heals all wounds. It's like, no, actually, it takes some active engagement. You know, you know, I see people frustrated because they've done a little bit of work and it's like, oh, well, I should be all healed. And it's like, no, life is a journey of healing. Life is a journey of breathing and letting go, breathing and becoming. And that's that evolving that I'm talking about, and other times people will have done a lot of work, but then something will come up and they go, oh, I should be over that by now. And it's like, the truth is you probably are over the significant problem, but this is subtler aspect of it you're healing. And it just refines and refines and refines. The past is the past and should be left there. Boy, what a terrible, gift that is to give to somebody because it gives them permission to ignore the best of who and what they are and to stay stuck throughout their life. Healing's a journey, and you're able to heal what's ready to be healed as you move along your path, and you need to trust that. And of course, having the tools and ability to handle all those things as they come up is really key, and that's what you learn in this journey. You know, it's emotional issues and any struggles in your life, they are truly nothing but indicators that something is calling and ready to be healed. So whenever you're feeling emotional or running into something that's triggering you, or you're struggling with something, just learn to breathe and recognize, oh, there's a part of me that's ready to heal. And so I need to breathe in. I need to look deeper. I need to look under that obvious emotion that's there and see what's really going on. Because that's how you access the parts that you need to continue to move forward in your life. You know, healing is about reconnection, regulation, and resilience, not perfection.
Progress, not perfection.
There you go.
It is so important, guys. Don't beat yourself up. As long as you've taken at least one step forward, it's baby steps. Like, I'm a big fan of baby steps. So those of you that are listening, we're about to wrap this up, and we've already got some really nice comments, but if you have any questions, this is an unbelievable opportunity for you to talk to Dr. Ron or myself. If you have questions for myself as a client of his or as a coach, we're both coaches. We're here. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and then we'll deal with them. So one of my last questions here: what are some baby steps that people can take to replace their negative trauma behaviors with some positive ones?
You've got to pay attention. You've got to be taking care of yourself. You just can't be ramrodding, charging through life and ignoring what you're feeling, what you're needing. So that's where the breathing comes in. You have to be breathing so that you can pay attention and see what choices you're making. And look for those early indicators that I talked about. If you're feeling stress, don't just get angry about that or push through it or try and fix it. Honor it and really breathe and look deeper and see what's really going on. What am I really feeling? What's underneath those feelings? And as you look deeper, you recognize, oh, that's something from my past, or it's something insignificant that I can just breathe into and let go in the moment. And so, yeah, those indicators, the struggles, feelings, and limiting patterns are what you want to recognize. So have to you have to breathe and be present enough. You have to use that stop process that I talked about. So you can be present enough, curious enough to really observe and see what's going on and what your best next step is.
I love that. That is one of the tips, you guys, that I use the most from this is when I don't know what I should do and I'm just feeling like, just stop, breathe and think, okay, the next thing I can do right here, right now is this. And that just gives you that progress, right? Progress, not perfection. You did something and that keeps you moving instead of sitting down and having a pity party. And you know, if you have to have a pity party, put a time limit on it, please. Just put a time limit and say, okay, I'm gonna hit the couch and I'm gonna cry and scream.
I
And
agree. Yeah.
okay, there you go. Okay, so what role does a therapist, a coach, anybody, a guide like yourself, who's
Mhm.
also happens to be a therapist and a coach, what role you fit all the bills.
I do.
How important is that in getting where you want to get?
You know, I've been on this journey a long time, and I've really looked for what works, what doesn't work, what's temporary fix, what's really transformational, and all of that, and that's key. And I think it all has its place. But for me, I really see that there's only two pathways. There's the short path, which I kind of the analogy I would use is, you know, you're doing that deeper work, you're really diving in and committing to that transformation. And it only takes a couple of months to really make a significant transformation. It takes about, you know, months after that to integrate it all into your life so that the natural abilities come out more fully. But that 2 months is really where the significant shift takes place. Think in terms of NASA, when they shoot a rocket, they don't shoot it at an angle, they shoot it straight up. And what they're doing is they're trying to break through that atmosphere so they can get into space where there's less resistance. And that's true with transformational work, is you're really moving through that resistance to a place where now you're open to really live your life much more fully without all that resistance. So that's the short path. The long path, and this is one that I've certainly explored and honor, is, you know, go meditate in a cave on a mountain in Tibet. You know, it does lead in time to self-awareness. It does lead to inner wisdom, you know, of yourself and others, that where it arrives at a place of awareness of the oneness of the universe. So either one works, but just doing this, that's what you'll be doing throughout your life. You'll be stuck in between that comfort zone that you've established for your life and not really transitioning beyond it. You know, be like a lobster. You know, once a year they feel a niggle that and a discomfort that tells them that it's time to shed their old shell. So they go into their den, and scary as that might be because of, you know, how vulnerable they are, you know, they know that it's time to shed their shell. And if they don't shed their shell and grow that new larger shell, they'll die. And the same is true for us. If we don't, you know, grow, if we try and stay within that little safe zone, it'll kill us quite literally. And I'm talking about physiologically and in many other ways. So, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
go into the cave.
yeah.
Okay, so guys, if you would like a discovery call with Dr. Ron, it's only $5,000. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. It is free. It is absolutely free. If you would like to have a discovery call with him, you can go to drronstotts.com, or is it just ronstotts.com?
RonStotts.com is my website. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so ronstotts.com, and you can make an appointment for just a discovery call to see whether or not you're a good match for each other. And he will show you on that call, he will help you discover one of the biggest things that's holding you back. So we
Yeah.
did get a couple questions here. Did
All
you
right.
want to say anything about that, about the
On that
call?
discovery call, I want everybody to really understand that what we're going to be looking at is what your biggest challenge is, what's your dream come true, and really get clear on what you need to do to get there. It's not about you signing up for me. It's about you finding out what direction you want to go so you can make an empowered decision and move forward in your life. Yeah.
That sounds like a pretty great call. But it was for me. It was definitely good for me.
Okay.
So thank you, Eleanor. Great stuff. What age were you, Ron, when you started this journey?
Well, I I got out of the Marine Corps at 20, and I'd lost several dozen close friends, been killed in Vietnam, and I had a lot of guilt, a lot of, just feelings that I didn't know, have a clue of how to deal with. And, I unfortunately or fortunately, but I just got married and had a couple sons, and I just made a mess out of that relationship and became suicidal. And I just didn't know what to do. I had been this, national rowing champion and thought I had life all figured out before I went in the Marine Corps. And a couple of years later, I'm fumbling and really unclear, whether I can even function in the world. And so I had to, like I say, it's the best, worst year of my life because it really forced me to look deeper, to change my life. All of a sudden I had, instead of being a jock, I became much more introspective. I became much more self-aware, more spiritually conscious, more aware of others, more supportive of really creating a more, compassionate and caring world. And so that intention and that challenging time that I went through has taken me to a place where I'm really focused on now serving and supporting others and bringing the best out of them so that they can help others, along their journey.
Okay, great question, great answer. And can you recommend any special breathing techniques?
I can probably recommend about 100. Let's see. The simplest one is to just really be sitting there and breathe in and breathe out. And as you're breathing in, inwardly say in. As you're breathing out, inwardly say out. What you're looking for, meditation is about a single-pointed focus. So this is like a very simple form of meditation, a way to quiet and gain control of your mind, to recenter the mind because of all that neurological damage that subtle traumas had. So you're intentionally calming that mind so it's more centered, so your thoughts are better, so that you can see opportunities more fully. And so, yeah, just sitting there, breathing in, breathing out again and again. And maybe you move that up to the next level of you breathe into the count of four, hold it into the count of four, breathing out to the count of four, holding it out to the count of four. It's called box breathing. Some of you probably know about that. And of course, you can begin to extend that to, breathing into the count of 10, holding out to the count of 10, and same with coming in, and you can extend that count to whatever, length that you want to gain focus, to gain, a centered feeling and sense of being within yourself.
Thank you very much. What are some of the books you would recommend for someone who wants to dig a little deeper?
Well, if I look around, I'm quite a reader. So,
Mhm.
a fun one that Optimal by, is his name? Yeah, Daniel Goleman. If somebody's really interested in, does this stuff work? Does this make sense? Is this, if am I involved in business? Is this really, foreign stuff and I don't need to know about it? And Optimal is going to show you, back in, I think it was 96, he wrote the book on emotional intelligence. And this book that he just came out with probably a year ago really explores all of the research that's been done around emotional intelligence and has all sorts of quotes that show the significance that emotional intelligence, self-awareness has in the work, in, well, not just the work world, but in personal lives. And so it allows you to recognize, oh, things are changing rapidly. Where 1,000 CEOs 3 years ago, when asked, how important is all this, maybe 30% said, yeah, it's kind of important. Well, the current, going back to that same 1,000, over 90% actually are saying, yeah, it's critically important that leaders go through this transformational shift so they can become the more conscious, caring and empowered leaders that will create that more successful organization. So yeah, we're in a big shift. So that's a great book.
Okay. So guys, if you want to dig more in, um, go ahead and grab that book. Oh, Jama Fontaine wants to know why you didn't say about one of your books.
Well, I'm just humble.
I
The truth is, overscheduled by success really does delve into a lot of what we've been talking about, but it also transitions into, okay, understanding that this is how you begin to focus on what's truly important to you in your life and your work. And so it is a great book. It's in Amazon. And if somebody really wants to get into developing a more mindful mindset and really be able to gain control over their mind and mastery in their life, the ins and outs of mindfulness is a great book. It's a year-long, each week there's a new exercise, and if you find one you like, you can do it for 3 months or whatever you want. But the journaling's there, and so you begin to really track and follow your growth and development. The third book is real short and sweet, but it's really consolidating all the information about what um, really transformational conscious leadership is all about. So if somebody wants to get a great overview of that, then that's the one you'd want to go for. Yeah. But thank you, Jama.
and she just gave you a great review on your book. She said it's
Oh,
great,
well,
and
thank you very
I
much.
concur,
Okay.
absolutely. Oh my goodness, is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have?
Well, the question that sometimes people ask is, who needs this? And I have to be honest, and that's not just, well, maybe that is why I'm in the field, but to be honest with you, it's anyone who wants to open up their heart and their mind, so they can access the best of who and what they are, and to create the inspiring life that you've always dreamed of. So, do you need this? No, not if you want to stay stuck in a limited comfort zone and watch your life contract. But if you really want to discover who you are and what you're capable of, if you want to open up your heart, have relationships with yourself and others that are truly inspiring and filled with love. If you want to open up your mind and learn to think and create on levels that you perhaps never even realized you were capable of, then this healing process makes sense. It's what you need to do to reconnect and become whole and authentic and capable. So up to you.
Yeah, you have a choice. You could pick door one or door two.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't make anybody wrong. I really don't. Yeah.
well, and you can, if you're not ready for it, you can't do it. Someone else can't want it for you. Like I
Mm.
can't send my friend who needs this and say, okay, here, you fix her. And
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
like, I don't want to be fixed. I'm perfectly happy with who I am.
That's no
So
fun
yeah,
for
it's
anybody.
no, especially probably not you.
Right. Oh, did
Well,
I say
thank you.
that?
Thank you so much. Guys, we're going to do this again for the next 3 weeks, same time, Thursday, same bat time, same bat channel. Please come prepared with any questions that you might have. Obviously, Dr. Ron is very, very agreeable to answer them and to give you his wisdom. And anyone who has a PhD in psychology is a wonderful resource. Who doesn't wonder about the things that make you go, all the time. And he's got the answers. So is there anything you'd like to say before we part ways?
Find the courage to love yourself. Find the courage to take that armor off your heart and love and unconditionally accept yourself. And you'll find that it opens up your mind and life becomes this tremendous opportunity that you perhaps didn't realize it was. And so, yeah, find the courage to be you and enjoy your life fully.
I love that advice. Thank you, Dr. Ron. Thank you
Thank
guys
you.
so much for
All
joining
right.
us. We hope you'll be back next week.
All right. Thank you, everybody.